under the grand marble dome of the United Nations. The air was heavy with expectation. Flags of nearly every nation stood in silent order, and the cameras were already rolling, sending images across the world. Journalists leaned forward with pens ready, and translators sat waiting behind their booths. The agenda was peace, the topic was Gaza, and the goal, at least on paper, was unity. Benjamin Netanyahu stood near the center of the chamber, his expression calm, his tie perfectly straightened. He had been here countless times before. He was used to the rhythm of these summits, accusations from critics, applause from allies, and, in the end, little real change. He expected nothing different this time. A few harsh words, a few polite responses, a handshake for the cameras. Routine. But then the room shifted. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young president of Burkina Faso, entered the chamber with deliberate steps, his presence breaking the rehearsed flow of diplomacy. He carried no notes, no written speech. His uniform was simple yet commanding, and his gaze was steady. The cameras swung toward him instantly. For weeks his fiery words against imperialism and exploitation had echoed across Africa. And now here he was, in the very heart of global power. Netanyahu adjusted his posture, ready to extend a hand. The photographers prepared to capture the moment, the handshake, the smile, the illusion of peace. But Traoré did not reach out. He stopped in front of Netanyahu, his eyes unflinching, his face unshaken. For a heartbeat, silence held the room. Then, in a voice that carried across the hall without hesitation, he said, "You're a liar." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Diplomats froze in their seats, translators hesitated, unsure if they should soften the words. But there was no mistaking them. Netanyahu's smile faltered, his hands suspended in the air. The silence deepened, but Traoré's voice did not waver. "You speak of peace while your bombs bury children under rubble. You speak of justice while you steal land that is not yours. You demand security while you bring only death." The chamber trembled with the weight of his words. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded almost imperceptibly, their relief visible that someone had finally said aloud what they had whispered for years. Netanyahu opened his mouth to respond, but Traoré raised his hand slightly, not in insult but in command. The cameras zoomed in on his face, his steady expression filling screens across the globe. "This summit was meant to speak of peace," he continued. "But peace cannot come from lies. Today Africa speaks. Today truth stands here, and truth will not be silenced." The applause began quietly, a few scattered claps from African delegations. Then it grew, spreading like fire through dry grass. Within seconds, it became a standing ovation. The walls shook with the force of it. Delegates who had long swallowed their words now stood tall, clapping with relief, with recognition, with courage. Netanyahu remained still, his face tightening. He had faced protests before, criticism before, but not like this. Not here, not now, not in front of the entire world. Traoré's voice rose above the ovation. "This is not only about Gaza. This is about every child in Africa whose future is stolen by foreign hands. This is about every nation told it is too weak, too poor, too small to demand dignity. Today I say, no more. No more weapons sold while you preach peace. No more contracts signed while you steal our resources. No more walls built while you speak of freedom. Enough hypocrisy. Enough lies. The world deserves truth." The applause thundered again, louder, unstoppable. Cameras captured every second. On social media, clips spread instantly, captions blazing across timelines. Traoré confronts Netanyahu. Africa rises. The world awakens. In the chamber, the moderators looked stunned, their papers forgotten. The usual rhythm of summit diplomacy was broken beyond repair. What followed, the speeches, the statements, the prepared declarations, felt hollow compared to what had just unfolded. When the summit ended, it was Traoré whom reporters chased. Traoré whose words dominated headlines. Traoré who had shifted the conversation. For the first time, a leader from one of the world's poorest nations had stood against one of the world's most powerful, and the impact could not be undone. Across the world, in small cafes, crowded living rooms, and noisy markets, People replayed his words. They remembered the courage, the defiance, and above all, the honesty. They remembered the moment Netanyahu's hand was left hanging, and the moment silence gave way to thunderous applause. Analysts argued about what it meant, whether it would spark political consequences, whether it would bring backlash, whether sanctions or isolation would follow. But for ordinary people, the meaning was simpler. They had witnessed truth in a place where lies usually ruled. And that truth, once spoken, could not be buried. The world had sat down for peace. Traoré had stood for justice. And in doing so, he carved a moment into history that would echo far beyond the marble walls of the United Nations.